when it's minus 20 or 30 with a wind chill this time of year, those advertisements for going away to a tropical vacation, they are very enticing, aren't they? And it's no coincidence that we see more of them this time of year, because it's also what they call cold and flu season. Many people have gotten the flu. Maybe some of our dear friends have gone through that recently. But when it comes to taking a holiday, what do you look for? Besides warming up your bones and your skin in the sun and the sand. Well, how about this particular place, which has been called the crown jewel of the South Pacific? The island of Bora Bora. Have you heard of that name before? It's in French Polynesia. The name itself just evokes visions of paradise. But if that's not enough, here's the official blurb on the travel site of the French Polynesian travel site here. It says, truly the most romantic island in the world. From the dramatic scenery to the privacy and amenities of the underwater bungalows, everything in Bora Bora equals a 10 on the romance scale. So married brothers, if you need a little bit of a reinvigorating of your marriage, this is where your wife wants to go. Why? Well, it says, resorts have been welcoming couples for over 40 years, and their special amenities have been fine-tuned to perfection. From sunrise to sunset, each resort has designed their own blend of unique romantic experiences for the guests to choose from. What types of things? This will whet our appetites. Exploration of the panoramic overlooks found by hike or 4x4. Excitement above the lagoon by outrigger canoe. Enchantment from the neon-lit turquoise lagoon waters. What about discovery of world-renowned shopping for local and international original art, Tahitian pearls, perfumes, and oils, and precious wood handcrafts? When can we go? That's the question. Well, even if we have the means to fly to the South Pacific for an all-inclusive week or 2-week vacation, there's one sad truth. We have to come back. It's a temporary paradise, isn't it, brothers and sisters? It would be wonderful to see. Maybe some of us have had the means to go there. But it's just one of many places in the world that's described as a little paradise. But we need more than just a vacation. When we come back from a holiday, we still have the same things to face. And especially if we've left like an office-type job, when you come back, you know, the work pile was this, and now it's this. And you almost wish you hadn't gone on vacation. We need more than just a vacation. We need a new world. Why? Well, do we have to talk about what's been on the news lately? You turn it on and you see people getting gunned down in places like Paris, Toronto, New York. You hear of people fleeing their countries on these ships that weren't made for them, and the crew abandoning the ship in the middle of the ocean. All these refugees are trying to make it to a new world because where they lived before was horrible. World leaders talk about controlling things, maybe offering some hope. But how often does that come true? We know the reality. Human governments have ruled for thousands of years. They talk about making changes, but sometimes they don't have the motive, and most of the time they don't have the ability, do they? No. If we turn our Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 8, this is a fundamental truth that was written many centuries ago, actually, and it's even more true today. Ecclesiastes chapter 8. A wise man was inspired to write this, and it's in the Bible record. And how much more true are his words today than they were then? Chapter 8 and verse 9 of Ecclesiastes says this: all of this I have seen, and I applied my heart to every work that has been done under the sun during the time that man has dominated man to his harm. Or you notice the footnote? Or to his injury or detriment. And that's true of human governments, isn't it? So what do we need? We need a new world, but we also need the oversight that would cause us to enjoy that new world. Well, where can mankind look for a better world? Well, we just ruled out any type of government because they have failed. So to whom can we look? Well, let's turn to 2 Peter chapter 3. This is pretty much our theme scripture for our biblical discussion this morning. 2 Peter chapter 3. And here the Apostle Peter, he records a promise that we can really put our faith in. We really can see the fulfillment of this in the near future, and we know we will not be disappointed. 2 Peter chapter 3 and 13 says this. But there are new heavens and a new earth that we are awaiting according to his promise, and in these righteousness is to dwell. Well, this is the Christian apostle Peter. When he says, according to his promise, to whom is he referring? He's referring to none other than Almighty God. So when Almighty God, Jehovah, who is the creator of this beautiful earth, says, I'm promising you a new heavens and a new earth, and we know what he means. He doesn't mean he's going to destroy the existing earth. It's too beautiful, too precious. It's a perfect creation by him. He's going to restore it back to its glory. And when he speaks of the heavens, again, we're not talking about the stars and the planets, no, above us, of course not. But it's a ruling authority over this earth. So Jehovah has promised this. What will be the means that Jehovah will use to make this promise come true? It's the kingdom that people have been praying for centuries. Commonly known as the Our Father prayer. People know that by heart according to the old King James Version, or maybe in a different language. But that kingdom will fulfill God's promise. Now, how do we know this? Well, imagine you met someone on the street later on today, and they said, hey, you, yes, can I talk to you? Sure, what's up? How would you like a brand new house? Just the way you like it. You say, okay, that's nice, see you later. I don't know you. We don't trust someone we don't know. But with Jehovah, it's different. When he promises to give us life in paradise, we can put trust in it. How so? Well, in many ways. Think of the way that the Bible describes what type of person God is. Think of the dealings he had with the ancient nation of Israel. Remember, they were occupying a land that was coveted by surrounding powerful nations. Remember what Jehovah did? He protected them. He protected them physically, morally, spiritually, and every other way you can think of. He even delivered them through the arid desert region after he delivered them from Egypt, when they were slaves, to live in that land. So his qualities of loyalty, loving kindness, goodness, and then that father figure of a protector and a rescuer. So these things are recorded in the Bible for a reason. For us to have trust and hope in Jehovah. And also, too, the principles on which his government are founded are made clear. Some people think that the Bible's a big book. Okay, so have you read the Bible from cover to cover? You say, what? 1,400 pages? I'm going to read the Bible cover to cover? Well, go to a law library and go into the section that has all the volumes of Canadian law. The Bible is insignificant as far as the number of pages where that is concerned. And they're always adding to it. But you never hear, okay, we're going to add another Bible book this week. The Bible was completed in the first century, and completed means completed. So what does it contain? Well, we know it's not a big list of rules of do's and don'ts, but the principles on which God's kingdom government will operate are in here. It's no mystery. Also, we have something else that gives us a real hope, and that's the key person that will be the ruler of the kingdom. Now, suppose a friend of yours called you or texted you and said, hey, can you come pick me up at the airport? You say, well, fine, that's my friend. But what if the friend says, I have a friend. Can you pick them up at the airport? You say, well, I need a couple of details here. There's a lot of people at the airport. So they give you a little description. Maybe they say they're going to be wearing, a little white puff today, and maybe a red hat or something like that. They give you some clues. So you go to the airport and you look for that person. What about the person that would be the ruler of the kingdom, the Messiah? Do we have any details or clues as to what that person would be when they would finally arrive? Well, notice this. This was a little observation by this author, Henry H. Haley. He said, suppose a number of men of different countries who had never seen nor in any way communicated with one another would walk into a room and lay down a piece of carved marble, which pieces, when fitted together, would make a perfect statue. How would a person account for it in any other way that some one person had drawn the specifications and had sent each man his part? That's a good little illustration. Then he concludes like this. How can this amazing composite of Jesus' life and work, put together by different writers of different centuries, ages before Jesus came, be explained on any other basis than one superhuman mind supervised the writing? He said it was the miracle of the ages. It is not a small thing that the Bible identifies the Messiah. And it's not a smaller thing that Jesus fulfilled all of those prerequisites in detail, completely. What does that mean? That means that no other person could come along and say, I'm the Messiah, or I'm going to be the ruler of God's kingdom. Remember, Jesus himself in the Gospels warned us against false Christs and false messiahs. But we have no reason to doubt that, because it's a miracle that Jesus fit that particular mold, so to speak, as that writer put very nicely for us, or illustrated for us. And if we turn to Proverbs chapter 3, so this is a very quick overview of, the trust that we can put in that promise that God has made, and in particular, the kingdom and the principal ruler of the kingdom, Jesus the Messiah. So, Proverbs chapter 3. When we look into the Bible account and when we make it our own, when we build trust in it and realize that it is true, what are we to do? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 tells us. It says, trust in Jehovah with all your heart, and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways take notice of him, and he will make your paths straight. So in one very outstanding way, we are to put our trust in Jehovah. He says, I've established a kingdom, I've installed my son who is the promised Messiah, that there's unmistakable proof of it in the Bible record and in history, and now he asks something of us, to trust him. And we can do that. And we can do it with all our heart. So when the King of God's kingdom says, he instructs his followers to preach the kingdom, to tell others about the solution for mankind's problems, we put our trust in that. We don't get involved in these, all the time it seems like there's, in North America, an election. Every time you turn around, there's an election for the mayor, or for city council, or for student council, or for the school council, and then there's the provincial, and then the federal elections. People, they don't know what to do. But we know what to do. We trust Jehovah with all our heart. And thus we do not get involved in the political squabbling, because that's no solution. It would be like having a major open wound from a trauma, and we decide, no, I'm not going to go to the hospital today. I'm going to go home and put a couple of Band-Aids on. We know that would be a very short-term and foolish Band-Aid solution. In fact, we could probably easily die from the wound. Jehovah knows that this planet and this society of humans is suffering, is bleeding. He has the only solution, and we need to trust him. Of course, we know that Jesus plays a major role in the making of a better world. Think of what he was like when he was here on the earth for a very short ministry. But if we take it right to the end of his ministry, what did Jesus do? He did what many people know, that verse in John 3:16. He gave up his life for others to gain life. Now, what did that mean? Well, we're talking about qualifying for God's new world. That's the theme of our discussion. Jesus gave his life so we could gain entry. It's kind of like when you go to a border control, they ask for your papers, and usually that means a passport, right? Or maybe even a visa, a visitor visa. Or if we're moving to another country, we better have some serious documentation to back up our claim, right? Otherwise, they'll send us right back the way we came. Well, Jesus' death is like a passport or a visa gaining us entry into God's new world. And what a precious price. We could never pay for that on our own. We know what the Bible says about that. So his death eliminated that great obstacle entering into the new world, removing something that we have inherited imperfection and sin. We also know from Bible chronology and the events that are taking place today that since 1914, now unbelievable, 100+ years since Jesus began ruling as king in the heavenly kingdom. How outstanding is that? And we've also seen what has been accomplished in the last 100 years. Soon, Jesus will do what says at Daniel chapter 2. Let's turn there together. And although we are very peace-loving people, we are not pacifists. We support a kingdom that will take action that is necessary in the near future. And of course, the Bible does not condone any human to take up arms, but we support the kingdom that will do a very outstanding act in the very near future. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 44. What does it say there? It says, in the days of those kings, that is the current rulership, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. And this kingdom will not be passed on to any other people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, and it alone will stand forever. What a relief that will be. How wonderful it will be not to have to hear about a country has invaded a neighboring country and many people have died. Or not to hear that people are fleeing from their country of birth and leaving their relatives because of the oppression of their home country. What a relief that will be. Think of the stress that will be relieved from humans. And even if that doesn't affect us directly, it affects us indirectly. Soon, God's kingdom will destroy all human governments. That will result in just one type of person living, qualifying for life in God's new world. Pardon me, righteous people. And in the meantime, if we turn to Isaiah chapter 32, we know that Jehovah kind of looks at his people like compares us to sheep, and sheep always need a shepherd. In Isaiah 32, even in this difficult time of the end that we live in, Jehovah is providing that loving oversight. So prophetically, it's mentioned here in Isaiah 32, verses 1 and 2. And Jehovah, through his son Jesus, the ruling king, has made this provision. It says, look, a king will reign for righteousness. We know who that king is. And then it says, and princes will rule for justice. And this is what they would be like, and more than likely we've experienced this in our own congregations. And each one will be like a hiding place from the wind, a place of concealment from the rainstorm, like streams of water in a waterless land, like the shadow of a massive crag in a parched land. So if Isaiah lived in Canada in January, he would have probably said it'd be like a shelter against the wind chill. Better than any bus shelter. But who would fit this description of being this shelter, this relief from the elements? The congregation elders. How happy we are, these spirit-appointed men, along with the ministerial servants in our midst, are designated to take care of us. Without these ones, we'd all be like sheep wandering around, not knowing where to go. Jehovah, through his son Jesus, has provided this provision. And they are doing what we need, which is helping us to qualify for life in God's new world. So how can we do that? Who sets the standard? Well, who else? Jehovah. That's no mystery. And what type of standard is there to living in God's new world? Because think about it. Have you ever heard of a situation where someone has gone onto a plane, even for a holiday or a business trip, and they become a hostile passenger? You ever heard of these reports? What happens sometimes? They turn the plane around. They take the person into custody. Everybody else on the plane suffers. All their plans are delayed because of one or two people. That could happen in the Christian congregation. Sometimes it does. A person is unruly. It affects the whole congregation for a time. We don't want to be like that. We want to be the type of passenger that gets along with everybody, obeys the captain's orders, makes it safely to the destination. So Jehovah sets the standard for entry into the new world. And prophetically, if we turn a few pages over to Psalm 15, 1 to 5, here uses some imagery of being a guest in Jehovah's tent. And if any of us have gone or enjoyed camping, we know a tent is a modest little dwelling. Doesn't hold a lot of people. What type of person would you want to stay with you in a tent if you're camping? You'd want to trust that person. You better get along with that person. You better like that person. Well, notice in verses 1 to 5 in Psalm 15, it says, O Jehovah, who may be a guest in your tent? Who may reside in your holy mountain? And then verses 2 to 5 answers those two questions. It says, the one who is walking faultlessly, practicing what is right, and speaking the truth in his heart. He does not slander with his tongue. He does nothing bad to his neighbor. He does not defame his friends. He rejects anyone who is contemptible, but he honors those fearing Jehovah. He does not go back on his promise, even when it is bad for him. He does not lend his money on interest, and he does not accept a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things will never be shaken. Or we could add, whoever does these things or lives like this is looking to qualify into entry into God's new world. So, what type of things is Jehovah looking for in particular? Peaceable people. The world today is filled with warfare or people that are aggressive, contentious, and they're very quick to take up arms, even in certain places on the planet. Even in Toronto, people are disposed to fight. Jehovah wants peaceable people. He also wants people that respect an arrangement that he made. Let's go to Hebrews 13 and verse 4. We know how devastating a disease or a condition cancer is. No doubt we know people who have gone through this. Maybe it's affected our own families. We know that cancer affects on the cellular level. Okay? So that each individual cell gets attacked. Well, society is made up of units, the family unit. Satan is bent on destroying the family, just like cancer is trying to destroy ourselves. So in Hebrews 13 and 4, we have to combat that. Notice what it says here. It says, let marriage be honorable among all, and let the marriage bed be without defilement, for God will judge sexually immoral people and adulterers. We can very easily conclude that God will not allow sexually immoral people and adulterers to live in his promised new world. So to qualify to live there, we must honor God's marital arrangement. And if a person doesn't, and we do that as Jehovah's dedicated people, we respect that. And so we don't get caught up in flirting in the workplace or at school. We don't go online to seek out romances in a dark place without anyone else knowing. We don't view things that Jehovah would deem to be unclean. And we also don't speak poorly about our mate. Ever been around someone and they start bad-mouthing their mate right in front of you? Don't you feel embarrassed for that person? Don't you feel uneasy? How does Jehovah feel? We know how he feels. He wants us to honor the marital arrangement. And then, of course, a key requirement for qualifying to live in God's new world is the identifying mark of true Christianity. We remember what that is. What did Jesus say? That love would identify as true followers. So the human society would be permeated with that in God's new world. And that means there would be no place in God's new world for ungodly, selfish, materialistic people. Generally speaking, who fits that description of the requirements? It's Jehovah's named people, Jehovah's Witnesses like you and I. And that is not something that we just ourselves say, but others notice it as well. For example, just think of this small thing, okay? And in many countries of the world, corruption and stealing are very common. Taking something that's not yours is not really frowned upon. But for Jehovah's people, it's different. We have higher standards because they're God's standards. This young man in an African country, in South Africa, named Zongezili. It's a neat name. Young man, he had a little savings account. And I guess he felt good about checking how much he had in the bank. It made him proud. So he went to the bank one day. He got the slip from the ATM, and it said he had an extra 6,000 US in his bank account, or 42,000 South African currency. That's a lot of money for him, and he knew it wasn't his. So you can imagine him standing there with his mouth open and say, where did this money come from? And so the bank security guard next to him and others said, take the money out and put it somewhere else. But he knew that was wrong. It wasn't his money. This young man lived with a witness couple who commended him because he went home, he told them what happened, and he did not follow that advice to withdraw this money that didn't belong to him. On the next working day, he went back to the bank. It was discovered that this account number was switched by mistake. A rich businessman deposited the money into his account by mistake. So this businessman came and he was amazed. He's like, this never happens. What did he ask him? He asked him this question: what is your religion? Think how proud Jehovah was in the heavens at that moment. So of course he told him. He was warmly commended by the bank officials who said, we wish that all people were as honest as Jehovah's Witnesses. Truly acts of honesty and goodness can cause others to glorify Jehovah. What a heartwarming account. One little thing. Being honest with something that doesn't belong to us. Jehovah's people are renowned. They're known for this type of behavior. At the same time, along with being morally sound and clean and following things in the right way, there's something that we're all active with that Jehovah also requires. We alluded to it before, the preaching work, which is like a campaign work. It's an advertising. And we see advertising all around, don't we, brothers and sisters? And sometimes we're sick of it. Sometimes we can't avoid it. Like, even if you don't watch TV, you hear it on the radio. If you don't listen to the radio, you see it on the newspaper. You see it on billboards. You go on the bus, it's there. You go on the subway, it's there. You can't avoid it. You sit on a bench, it's there. You go in the supermarket, it's on the ground. Advertising. Well, isn't it appropriate that we advertise the kingdom, which will be the solution to mankind's problems? And we do it, of course, because we love people. We're not doing it for selfish gain. Along with that, we conform to the Bible standards. We cooperate with a faithful and discreet slave, who we know is directing the kingdom preaching work and helping us to qualify to live in God's new world. And we need to do so now. Like, if there's something, imagine now you have in the back of your mind, oh, I didn't declare something on my little piece of paper when I'm crossing into another country. You ever have that uneasy feeling? Now, we're not criminals, we're not doing something secretly, but can you imagine now if the customs people say, open up that bag? And they open the bag and there's that item that you forgot to declare, staring them in the face. And they look at you, they look at the thing and say, what's that? You say, I'm sorry, I forgot. Well, they may confiscate it, they may fine us, or if it's something serious, they may say, you're coming with us. It's a prohibited item. We don't want anything like that to happen to us when Jehovah's new world soon becomes a reality. We want nothing to hinder us from going through. So if there is anything that we have to clear up, we need to do it today, not tomorrow. God's new world will become a reality for those who qualify for it. If you've ever booked a holiday and it's a really good deal, you know, sometimes I have a little countdown. 5 seats left. You have 4 minutes to book this. And you're like, get the credit card. I can't find it. And if you delay, you miss out. But that's not the case for us when it comes to God's new world. Every single person who qualifies will be granted entry. There is no fixed number, but there is a time. And when Jehovah says the time is up, we need to be ready. What will we be looking forward to in God's new world? Better than any all-inclusive resort. Paradise will be restored and extended earth-wide. Wars will be a thing of the past. There'll be no such thing as famine, and only righteous people will live there. And if we turn to Psalm 37 and read verse 11 and 29, can we picture ourselves in this word, in this text here in the Bible? Psalm 37. A scripture we often read to our neighbors when we're engaged in the field ministry, but it applies to us. We want to be there. Notice here, it says in Psalm 37:11 and then verse 29, but the meek will possess the earth, and they will find exquisite delight in the abundance of peace. And verse 29, the righteous will possess the earth, and they will live forever on it. Yes, brothers and sisters, Let's act now that we may be included among that great crowd of survivors and live under Jehovah's protective care in his new world forever.